Chapter 6. Sustain excellence. Strong relationships, natural collaboration, excellent performance, and professional growth create an impressive foundation, but only if they're sustainable over time. Your final challenge is ensuring that everything you've built doesn't come at the cost of team member well-being. Sustainable excellence requires proactive workload management and capacity monitoring. Sarah mentioned during a one-on-one that she'd been working until 9 p.m. every night for 2 weeks to meet client deadlines, and she was worried about making mistakes. Anna realized she'd been assuming, quote, everything is fine because deliverables were on time. Sarah, why didn't you mention this earlier? Anna asked. I didn't want to seem like I couldn't handle the work. Everyone else seems to manage their workload fine, and I thought this was just a busy period that I needed to push through. Anna had another wake-up call. She'd been measuring team performance by output quality and delivery timelines, but she had no visibility into the sustainability of that performance. Sarah was working unsustainable hours, but because she was meeting deadlines, Anna hadn't noticed the problem. How many other team members were operating at unsustainable levels? Over the next week, Anna discovered that Elena was handling all the quick requests that accumulated throughout the day because she didn't want to bother anyone with small tasks. Jordan was doing everyone's data infrastructure work because he was the only one who understood the systems. David was attending too many client meetings because he was the primary relationship contact. The team was producing excellent work, but the workload distribution was creating hidden stress and sustainability risks. Anna realized that building individual relationships, creating team safety, and focusing on results meant nothing if people burned out achieving those results. Her final challenge was creating systems for sustainable high performance. Sarah's unsustainable work schedule illustrates a monitoring challenge you may face: how to assess true workload impact rather than just deliverable completion. This chapter shows you how to proactively balance capacity to ensure sustainable high performance. Your responsibility, that only you can do, sustain excellence. How this chapter helps: you have unique visibility across team members, work and authority to redistribute tasks, adjust priorities, and protect boundaries. Individual contributors can't see the full team workload picture or make systemic changes to work distribution. Building on all the systems you've created, your final challenge is ensuring that strong relationships, psychological safety, clear outcomes, and development opportunities remain sustainable over time. This means proactively managing capacity to prevent the burnout that would undermine everything you've built. What balancing workloads means. You proactively monitor and manage team capacity to ensure sustainable high performance by identifying workload imbalances, redistributing tasks strategically, and protecting team members from unsustainable demands. This isn't about making work easier, it's about making excellent performance sustainable over time. Why this matters. When managed sustainably, remote workers consistently show lower burnout rates than their office counterparts. The challenge is that remote work amplifies workload visibility issues you can't see when team members are struggling, but they often feel pressure to prove productivity by overworking. This makes proactive capacity monitoring essential for sustainable performance. What this includes: capacity monitoring, workload redistribution, boundary protection, stress tracking, and recovery planning. What this excludes: individual performance management, Chapter 4, relationship building, Chapter 2, or team communication design, Chapter 3. Research foundation: why sustainable performance requires active load balancing. Proactive workload management is essential for reducing burnout risk. Researchers have identified 6 key areas where a mismatch between a person and their job can increase this risk, including workload, control, rewards, community, fairness, and conflicting values. Maslach and Leiter, 2022. Translation: when workload, autonomy, and organizational fairness are misaligned with an individual's capacity and expectations, burnout becomes inevitable. Managers who actively monitor these factors and intervene before problems escalate create conditions where teams can maintain consistent performance without the destructive cycles that lead to exhaustion and disengagement. Remote work amplifies both workload visibility challenges and sustainability concerns. Managers can't see when people are struggling because visual cues are limited, but remote workers often feel pressure to prove their productivity by overworking. Many remote workers report working longer hours than they did in office settings, with increased stress levels due to blurred work-life boundaries. Crucially, research demonstrates that workload balance isn't about reducing work, it's about optimizing distribution and sustainability. Teams with properly balanced workloads consistently outperform those caught in crisis management cycles because they can dedicate energy to strategic thinking rather than firefighting. When workload distribution aligns with individual capacity and team rhythms, organizations see sustained high performance instead of the boom and bust patterns that characterize poorly managed remote teams. The 5 essential workload systems: capacity monitoring and assessment. How this works: implement structured methods for understanding each team member's actual workload capacity, including volume, complexity, emotional demands, and energy requirements, rather than just tracking task completion or hours worked. This involves regular capacity check-ins, workload visibility systems, stress indicator monitoring, and sustainable performance baseline establishment. Why this matters: traditional workload assessment focuses on task quantity rather than actual capacity impact, leading to imbalanced work distribution and burnout risk. Manager workload assessments often underestimate actual team member capacity strain because they fail to account for the psychological and physiological costs associated with high job demands, such as task complexity and emotional labor. Backer and Demirudi, 2024. Effective capacity monitoring enables proactive intervention before stress becomes unsustainable and helps optimize work distribution based on actual rather than assumed capacity. Capacity assessment framework. Volume monitoring: how much work in total hours and task quantity. Complexity assessment: cognitive load and skill requirements of different tasks. Emotional labor recognition: client-facing work, difficult conversations, high-stakes decisions. Energy pattern tracking: individual productivity cycles and recovery needs. Stress indicator observation: signs of approaching capacity limits, quality changes, communication pattern shifts. Implementation example: Anna established weekly capacity check-ins where team members rated their workload in 4 categories: project volume 1 to 5, task complexity 1 to 5, stress level 1 to 5, and energy availability 1 to 5. When Elena rated her stress as 4 for 2 consecutive weeks, Anna proactively investigated, rather than waiting for her to request help. She discovered that while Elena's project count seemed reasonable, she was handling all the quick requests that accumulated throughout the day: data pulls, ad hoc analyses, and methodology questions. This emotional labor of being constantly available was draining her energy for larger projects. Anna also noticed that Jordan's interruption patterns were affecting his focus time, even though his official project load was manageable. Anna implemented capacity monitoring that went beyond task lists to include emotional demands of different types of work, interruption and context switching frequency, skill stretch requirements that increase cognitive load, and individual energy patterns that affected sustainable performance. The active monitoring revealed workload patterns that would have remained invisible through traditional project tracking alone. Workload redistribution protocols. How this works: create processes for shifting work when imbalances appear, considering skills, development opportunities, capacity constraints, and sustainable performance, rather than just moving tasks randomly. This involves cross-training initiatives, collaboration partnerships, and strategic work allocation that optimizes both individual and team performance. Why this matters: smart workload redistribution goes beyond just moving tasks from overloaded to underloaded people. Effective redistribution considers individual strengths, development goals, client relationships, and workload sustainability to create better outcomes for everyone involved. Research shows that strategic workload redistribution can improve team performance compared to ad hoc task shifting because it optimizes both capacity utilization and skill development. Redistribution strategies. Skill-based reallocation: moving work to people who can complete it more efficiently. Development-driven distribution: using workload adjustments to create learning opportunities. Collaboration partnerships: pairing team members to share complex work and build capabilities. Client relationship optimization: distributing client interactions to prevent relationship concentration. Capacity-based balancing: adjusting work distribution based on current individual capacity and energy. Implementation example: when Anna noticed that Elena was handling too many quick requests while Bobby had capacity for additional analytical work, she didn't just shift random tasks. Instead, she created a systematic redistribution approach. She established a rotation system for handling quick requests, so the emotional labor was distributed across the team rather than falling entirely on Elena. She identified analytical tasks that could serve as learning opportunities for other team members, allowing Elena to focus on higher complexity work while building team capabilities. Anna also created collaboration partnerships. Elena mentored Sarah on analytical approaches, while Sarah handled some of Elena's routine data validation work. For client work, she redistributed some of David's meetings to other team members, both reducing his overload and building broader client relationship capabilities across the team. The strategic approach ensured that workload redistribution improved both individual sustainability and overall team capability, rather than just moving problems around. Boundary setting and protection. How this works: establish and defend clear limits around work hours, availability expectations, scope creep, and capacity demands to ensure that team performance remains sustainable over time. This involves negotiating with stakeholders, setting realistic timeline expectations, and creating systems that prevent work from expanding beyond sustainable levels. Why this matters. Remote work makes boundary erosion particularly dangerous, because the physical separation between work and personal life disappears, making it easy for work to expand into all available time and mental space. Research shows that the inability to psychologically detach from work during leisure time is a common result of blurred boundaries linked to unfavorable affective states and poor well-being. Sonnentag and Wiegelman, 2024. Managers uniquely have the authority to negotiate with external stakeholders and establish organizational expectations that individual contributors cannot control. Boundary protection framework. Time boundaries, clear expectations about work hours, response times, and availability. Scope boundaries, defined limits on project expansion and additional request handling. Quality boundaries, realistic expectations about deliverable standards given time and resource constraints. Capacity boundaries, protection from overcommitment and unrealistic workload expectations. Recovery boundaries, planned periods of lower intensity work for rest and renewal. Implementation example: Anna established comprehensive boundary protection across multiple dimensions. She negotiated with clients to establish realistic response time expectations. 24 hours for non-urgent requests, same day for important issues, and immediate response only for true emergencies, with advance agreement about what constituted an emergency. She created scope protection by implementing change request processes that required explicit discussion about timeline and capacity impacts before additional work was added to projects. When the Morrison client requested additional analyses mid-project, Anna facilitated a conversation about either extending the timeline or prioritizing which analyses were most critical, rather than simply adding work to the existing scope. Anna also protected team capacity by negotiating realistic project timelines that accounted for quality requirements and team member development goals, rather than just accepting the fastest possible delivery dates. She established focus time blocks where team members weren't expected to respond to non-urgent communications, protecting concentrated work time. For recovery boundaries, Anna implemented systematic rest periods after high-intensity projects, ensuring that teams had opportunity to recharge before taking on additional demanding work. She also modeled appropriate boundary setting by not sending non-urgent communications outside business hours and respecting team members' time off. The boundary protection created sustainable performance conditions that enabled consistent excellence rather than cycles of high performance followed by exhaustion. Stress and well-being tracking. How this works: monitor team member stress levels, well-being indicators, and burnout warning signs to intervene proactively before problems become serious. This involves recognizing stress signals, creating supportive interventions, and adjusting workload or working conditions to maintain sustainable performance and team member health. Why this matters: research on early predictors of burnout emphasizes the importance of systematic detection methods for identifying warning signs before they become critical. Maslach and later, 2008. Proactive stress tracking enables sustainable high performance because team members receive support before their capabilities are compromised. Stress tracking framework. Communication pattern changes, shifts in response time, message tone, or interaction frequency. Quality pattern changes, subtle decreases in work quality or attention to detail. Energy pattern changes, reduced enthusiasm, creativity, or problem-solving engagement. Boundary pattern changes, working outside normal hours or difficulty disconnecting from work. Health pattern changes, mentions of sleep problems, stress symptoms, or work-life balance challenges. Implementation example: Anna developed systematic stress tracking that went beyond asking, "How are you?" She learned to recognize early warning signs that preceded serious stress problems. With Sarah, Anna noticed communication pattern changes. Responses became shorter and more task-focused, and Sarah stopped contributing to team discussions that weren't directly work-related. When Anna addressed this proactively, she discovered Sarah was working late consistently and feeling behind on everything, leading to social withdrawal and stress. For Jordan, Anna noticed quality pattern changes. His usually thorough technical documentation became sparse, and he started providing solutions without his typical detailed explanations. Early intervention revealed that constant interruptions were preventing him from doing the deep work he needed to maintain his standards. Anna established regular stress check-ins that included both direct questions, "How sustainable does your current workload feel?" and observation of patterns that might indicate stress before people were aware of it themselves. She created low-pressure ways for people to communicate about stress and workload concerns. When stress indicators appeared, Anna responded with targeted support, workload redistribution, deadline adjustments, additional resources, or changes to working conditions that addressed the specific stress sources, rather than just encouraging people to manage stress better. The proactive approach prevented stress from escalating to burnout, while maintaining team performance and individual well-being. Recovery and renewal planning. How this works. Intentionally plan periods of lower intensity work, learning opportunities, and capability building that allow team members to recover from high demand periods while continuing to contribute value. This involves creating sustainable rhythms of intensity and recovery rather than maintaining constant high performance demands. Why this matters: continuous high performance without recovery leads to decreased capability over time and eventual burnout. Strategic recovery planning ensures that rest periods contribute to capability building rather than becoming unproductive downtime. Teams that work at unsustainable intensity experience performance degradation, while those with planned recovery maintain consistent excellence over longer periods. This approach recognizes that sustainable performance requires alternating between periods of high intensity and intentional renewal. Recovery planning framework. Intensity rhythm planning, alternating high demand and lower demand work periods. Skill development recovery, using learning opportunities as active recovery from high-pressure work. Creative recovery, engaging different types of thinking and problem-solving to rest overused capabilities. Collaboration recovery, shifting from individual intensive work to team-based and social activities. Strategic recovery, using planning, reflection, and improvement activities as rest from execution demands. Implementation example. Anna established recovery planning that maintained productivity while allowing genuine renewal. After the team completed a high-intensity client project, instead of immediately starting the next demanding assignment, Anna planned a recovery period that included skill development activities that engage different thinking patterns than the intensive project work. Elena spent time learning new analytical frameworks while taking a break from complex client analyses. Bobby worked on technical training that was interesting, but less stressful than client-facing model development. Anna created collaborative recovery through knowledge-sharing sessions, where team members taught each other techniques and approaches, providing social interaction and learning without high-performance pressure. She established strategic recovery through project retrospectives and process improvement planning that contributed value while allowing mental rest from intensive execution. For individual recovery, Anna adjusted work assignments to include routine tasks that required competence but not maximum cognitive capacity, allowing people to contribute while rebuilding energy for complex challenges. The systematic recovery planning maintained team capability and readiness for future high-intensity work, while ensuring that rest periods contributed to team development rather than representing lost productivity. Building on previous skills. Balancing workloads integrates with and enhances all the other skills you've developed. Connection to building connections. Chapter 2. Your individual relationships provide the trust and communication needed for honest conversations about capacity and stress. People won't tell you they're overwhelmed unless they trust you to respond helpfully rather than judgmentally. Connection to creating safety. Chapter 3. Psychological safety allows team members to admit when they're struggling with workload, without fear of being seen as incompetent. It also enables peer support for workload management. Connection to focusing on results. Chapter 4. Clear outcome definitions make it easier to evaluate whether current workloads are sustainable for achieving those results. You can't balance workloads effectively without understanding what actually needs to be accomplished. Connection to enabling growth. Chapter 5. Development opportunities can serve as strategic workload distribution, while sustainable performance creates the foundation that makes growth possible. When people feel supported in managing their capacity, they have energy available for learning and advancement. The goal isn't to make work easy, it's to make high performance sustainable over time. That's the difference between teams that burn bright briefly and teams that maintain excellence consistently. In remote settings, that sustainability depends on your skill in balancing workloads, proactively rather than reactively. When you successfully balance workloads, you've mastered all 5 core responsibilities of remote leadership. You've created the complete system: individual relationships that enable trust and communication, team systems that facilitate collaboration and safety, performance frameworks that focus on outcomes and enable autonomy, development processes that create growth and advancement, and workload management systems that make sustainable excellence possible. Your team becomes a genuinely high-performing, collaborative, sustainable unit that can adapt to challenges and deliver exceptional results consistently, not despite being remote, but because their management approach is designed specifically for remote excellence. But mastering these skills individually isn't enough. You need a structured approach to integrate them into a cohesive transformation journey. Things to try. Quick wins this week. Capacity check. Ask each team member to rate their current workload on volume, complexity, stress level, and energy availability, 1 to 5 scale. Boundary review. Identify one boundary that needs strengthening: time, scope, quality, or capacity, and implement a specific protection measure. Redistribution opportunity. Look for one instance where work could be redistributed to balance capacity while creating development opportunities. 30-day experiments. Systematic capacity monitoring. Implement weekly capacity check-ins that track both quantitative workload and qualitative impact on individual sustainability. Stress pattern recognition. Learn to identify early stress indicators for each team member and establish proactive intervention protocols. Recovery planning. Create planned periods of lower intensity work that include skill development and strategic planning rather than simply reducing activity. System changes. Next 90 days. Comprehensive workload management. Establish integrated systems for capacity monitoring, workload redistribution, boundary protection, stress tracking, and recovery planning. Stakeholder boundary negotiation. Work with clients and organizational stakeholders to establish sustainable expectations about timelines, scope, and availability. Sustainable performance culture. Create team norms and organizational expectations that prioritize sustainable excellence over short-term performance spikes. What not to do. Avoid these mistakes. Reactive crisis management. Don't wait for burnout or performance problems before addressing workload issues. Activity-based assessment. Don't focus only on hours worked or tasks completed rather than actual capacity impact. Random task shifting. Don't just move work from overloaded to underloaded people without considering skills, development, and strategic value. Boundary erosion. Don't allow work expectations to expand beyond sustainable levels without explicit discussion and agreement. Continuous high intensity. Don't maintain constant high-performance demands without planned recovery and renewal periods. Warning signs to watch for. Team members consistently working outside normal hours or during time off. Quality decreases, communication changes, or engagement drops without clear external causes. People seem reluctant to take on new challenges or appear overwhelmed by routine work. Stress or burnout symptoms appear across multiple team members. High performance is achieved through unsustainable effort, rather than effective systems and processes. End of chapter. Note: preventing burnout while maintaining high performance requires systematic capacity management. Download all 4 tools at unlocked.click.